Hey everybody, you are now tuned into the Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture. Blacked out by the majority on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 online internet radio station, with your girl, Tequila. Today's special guest is a Director of Operations, Miss Kiera Montague, and Clinical Director, Yared, is that correct? Yared Salazar, of Abundant Life Therapeutic Services, better known as ALTS. How are you doing this morning, ladies?
Great. Thank you
Doing
so
well.
much.
Thank you for having
Wonderful.
us.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad that you're coming here. I know you guys advocate for children, especially within the mental health realm in the school districts. So I want you to basically introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your position, as well as the overall mission and goals of ALTS.
My name is Kiera Montague. I am the Director of Operations, and my primary role is to ensure organizational structure and implementation of the program.
Okay.
My name is Jared Salazar, and first I wanted to say that I am really glad to know that radio stations like Afro Vibe know the importance of mental health awareness and make room for segments like this to inform their audience. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I am the clinical director, and I supervise clinical and non-clinical staff.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the organization itself and what the mission is.
So, our overall mission at Abundant Life Therapeutic Services of Texas is to get as much mental health support within those underserved populations as we can. We do understand that there is a high need of mental health supports, however, a very low level of actual individuals seeking that support. So our goal is to, through the partnerships with the schools and by doing the community outreach, we're able to reach more folks that way and get them the supports that they need.
So what are some of the surrounding areas in Houston that you have found that you guys help the most?
Wow. We are all over, but predominantly Third Ward, Fifth Ward. We're just getting into Aldine. Jared, any that you can think of that I'm missing?
I'm thinking the area close to Spring Branch.
Yeah, Spring Branch. We're up there. We service all of Houston pretty much. So
That's amazing. I'm really glad to hear that you're all over Houston. It's just not one primary area.
Oh, no.
Because kids deal with those issues, whether it's in the suburbs or it's, in the lower income communities. Everybody,
Absolutely.
especially during COVID,
Amen.
is having those issues outside of financial issues.
Amen.
And so with you having to deal with mental health, I know in such a sensitive time right now with COVID going on, what have you noticed that has increased or has changed with people dealing with mental health issues since this pandemic has began?
Well, I think as a result of the pandemic, a lot of folks are not getting that same level of social interaction, right? People are confined at home, so that ups the stress level immensely. Parents who already are wearing several hats and have several responsibilities and duties are now having to educate their children as well, which can also put a burden because parents have to work, and that can be all-encompassing and very stressful for them to have to take on that role as well. Also, with COVID being what it is now, hearing that daycare is very limited is another concern, which is also negatively impacting some folks' ability to seek employment or work as much as they need to make ends meet, which then contributes to that financial stress. So we are seeing a lot of folks really go inward, unfortunately, instead of reaching out for the supports as they would when the world was a little bit more open. I hate to use that phrase, but I can't think of any other way to describe it. We have seen a reduction in people seeking out those supports that could be very beneficial to them, especially during these times in particular.
And what are some mental health issues that you think are affecting the children the most?
Blessings. Miss Salazar, why don't you take this one on?
So we know that the cases of depression and anxiety have significantly gone up, and that is 2 to 3 times more during this pandemic.
Yeah.
So those are one of the things that we know.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I was reading up on is I guess they have a lot of cases of child abuse taking place now because kids are in the home or whatever environment that they're in. And I know for some people, they look at it like, oh, people should be happy. Now you get to be home with your kids and we get more family time. But that's not the case for other children who may have that 8 hours at school that takes them away from that negative environment, that takes them to a place where they can seek that help in a safe environment for them at school where they may not feel comfortable with their parents at home. How do you feel like your organization will be able to come in with those children being there to kind of help them get through some of those things so they have something to look forward to, like you said, when the world does open back up?
So I think a part of Abundant Life's visibility within the community has been so impactful. Our outreach directors out there posting signs in those neighborhoods and putting flyers out there and really getting our information out there, saying hey to the folks and just getting in the community so that they know we are here. So that is first and foremost, is increasing our visibility. All the while, we are also providing the education, right? By doing shows such as yours, we want to make sure we're able to reach a wider population of folks that we might not reach when we're pounding the pavement going door to door. So those are the first two steps, is absolutely visibility of our program and also education on our program and what we offer and what we provide. Because some folks may have a misconception of what our organization may represent and may misaffiliate us with other government agencies, right? And we are not CPS, we are not Child and Family Services. We are all about child and family reunification and staying together and giving them the tools and the skills that they need to live a more holistic lifestyle together.
Now, just to piggyback on the child abuse rising with the cases, how do you feel like the organizations such as ALTS, it comes in and changes those behaviors, not just with the child, but with the parent as well? Because I know you guys actually offer family counseling too.
Correct.
So when you come in, let's say a child is dealing with child abuse, how do you come in and reinforce with the parents, this is how you can help your child's behavior versus using a physical method? How do you help them learn something different with how they communicate with the child?
So absolutely. I think first and foremost, having that clear understanding between the parent and the provider, what services we provide, right? Giving that education component. This is what we're here to do. We do understand that over the years, this may have been your form of discipline with your child, and we are not here to judge and say, no, don't do that. What we are here to do is give you other alternatives, right? Through our nurturing parenting program that you can utilize in lieu of the spankings or the cussing at your kids or, berating your children. We want to give them other alternatives, right? Because that's going to improve the overall relationship between the parent and the child. And then we also, as you have mentioned, have that family counseling piece where we can get the whole family together. We can talk about some of those generational behaviors that have been passed down when it comes to disciplining your kids and when it comes to reprimanding your children and just letting them know, again, we're not here to judge. We're just here to give you other tools to place in your toolbox.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because I believe as people of color, whether we're of Spanish origin or African origin, we all kind of have similar ways of disciplinary actions, right? We might say grandma threw the chocolate or, grandma went and got the belt or the wire hanger or whatever the case may be. But those are things that have been passed down.
Absolutely.
So we never were really taught the proper way how to communicate with each other and share our feelings, our emotions, what made us feel indifferent to that situation. And I think that's the number one issue with us, especially in America. Our communication is so off. We don't know how to just say what we feel and be transparent about it.
Absolutely.
And children have feelings. They're innocent, but they see and they learn and they repeat. And that's how we become the adults that we are today. And I think the organization, I know the organization is putting, like you said, those structures in place. So hopefully those kids can have a new way how to raise their children.
Absolutely.
And make getting mental health, really normalize it to where it's okay to get it every day. Even if something's not wrong with you, you still need to talk about how work was. And so you guys are helping normalize that. So let's talk a little bit about the structure and some of the services and programs that you offer.
Absolutely. So the structure of our organization is we provide a few services. We provide case management, we provide counseling, we provide medication training and support. We also provide medication management for those requiring medication, and we also provide skill building.
Amazing. So, what are some activities that you actually do with the children and then the parents as well?
So, some activities that you might typically see are, we use a lot of supplemental activities. So, we teach them through games, we teach them through visual aids, we teach them through just regular engagement and conversation. So, a couple of things that we work on are skills for dealing with feelings, right? So, they can learn how to more effectively communicate those feelings. We also work on those classroom survival skills so that they can learn skills to kind of self-manage their own behavior when they're in the classroom setting. We also work on those alternatives to aggressions. This is just for the children, right? And also the parents, because they have to be aware so that they can reinforce these skills that we are teaching. We also work with providing them alternative ways to deal with stress. So those coping skills. We provide them with the counseling, of course, and I'll let Ms. Salazar speak on that counseling, the type of services that we provide through counseling.
I wanted to add that the curriculums that Abundant Life Therapeutic Services uses are evidence-based. So that's one thing that I think it's very important to know about. And the different modalities that we use as well are evidence-based. For counseling, we use cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, trauma focus, so TFCBT, and family therapy. And we, as Ms. Montague was saying, we have counselors that use play therapy interventions to facilitate and help the children process their emotions and their thoughts that are so important, like you mentioned.
Absolutely. And with you being a clinical director, I know sometimes there's a stigma about taking mental health medication. How have you been able to get individuals to understand how to properly take the medication and not to be afraid to say that they do take it, or have to accept the fact that they might need that adjustment for them for the chemical imbalances that they deal with?
So that's a big challenge, of course, and that's why we do have that component that is the medication training and support, which specifically educates the parent and the child, adolescent, about the importance of the medication and the effects, the secondary effects, and the importance of being consistently taking those medications as prescribed by the psychiatrist.
Now, with taking the medicines, is the goal to temporarily use them to help manage those chemical imbalances and to hopefully get off and be able to deal with that emotional and mental stress on your own in a better way? Or is it like a long-term thing for some people?
So I'm not a doctor, obviously, so I'm limited on what I can say on that. However, it's case by case. So if you have a child or an adolescent that is experiencing symptoms that are debilitating him or her to the point where they're not functioning in, one or more of, the areas, then if it's determined by the psychiatrist that medication should be what's best recommended at the time, then that with the therapy and the skills will be what would be considered the best treatment.
Absolutely. That's amazing, though. I like the fact that you incorporate not just the medicine, but you say like the counseling and make it fun with the games.
They have to go hand in hand.
Yes.
Because
they
like what
have
I
to
was
go
telling you about my
together.
son before we got on the show, he's the type, he gets bored very quickly. He's smart, but he'll lose interest or attention span can be a little short. But you have to be able to figure out how that person receives or retains information because everybody's different, right? And so your organization has done such a great job at doing that. That's why you can service, one area that might be low income and then hop over to the suburbs because guess what? They're dealing with the same thing, right?
Absolutely.
Zip codes really don't change circumstances.
Not at
People
all.
don't understand that, so
Yeah.
it's amazing.
And if I can speak a little bit more on the structure when it comes to that medication management piece, we lead in with the skill building and counseling, right? Because if that is all they need to acquire those pro-social skills and those coping skills and strategies to learn how to better handle the stresses of life, then guess what? That is what they need to graduate our program and to be successful and live more self-sufficient lives. So that may be all they need. So we don't like to go in and offer them this medication first and then
Exactly.
do skill building and counseling in conjunction, because we never know. They may have just needed the skill building and counseling and then they were good to go. And I know I'm not speaking a lot on our case management, but we also provide that case management service, which is an integral part of the services that we do provide. And it's so important because it definitely teaches the parents and the kiddos about advocating for themselves. And it definitely educates them on what their rights are, because a lot of folks don't know what their rights are when it comes to seeking mental health supports. Some of them go into the doctor and they think, well, my doctor must be right. They're a doctor. They said I need to take this medication, so they must be right. They've got the education. What we do through that case management piece is provide them that education so that they can delve a little bit deeper, do that research with them so that they can find out, okay, yeah, your pediatrician did prescribe this. However, here's some side effects that they may not have mentioned. Here's some questions you should ask while you are in that appointment to have a better understanding. So we definitely want to give the parents and the children the tools to feel empowered so that they can make an informed decision when it comes to their treatment, whether medical or mental health, right?
And I love that because I think a lot of people are scared. They think the first thing they're going to do is be diagnosed and then medicated.
Correct.
And like you said, some people just need to talk. They just need to get some things off and figure out how to learn a better way to deal with, issues that they're having. And so when you come in and say, hey, here are some techniques on ways how to deal with your anger, how to deal with your depression, that's like a first step. So then when they realize, okay, I'm capable of making that first step, maybe I need medication to help me maintain to the next step.
Absolutely.
And so that's really great. I love when people like this come on my show and advocate for mental health, because I feel like that's one of the biggest things next to any other thing that we might be dealing with in the Black and brown community.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And we know that 2020 has been quite interesting for us all. And so people's mental health is at a high risk right now.
Absolutely.
And one last thing I want to mention before we go to our break really quickly is you guys are now offering the telehealth services system. How has that been able to aid your organization in continuing to provide those services?
Well, absolutely. With COVID-19, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of hesitation about being in close proximity, right? So one way that we are combating the spread of COVID-19 is by providing those telehealth services over a HIPAA-compliant platform, Zoom, so that we can reach as many folks who need the services and who could benefit from the services as we can. We still have folks who actually they want to be seen in person and they still want their services because that's the only normalcy they still have. So we do provide those in-person services, those face-to-face, and we just ensure our staff have the appropriate PPE to ensure that they are protecting themselves, and we also provide PPE to the clients and their families as well to risk the spread of COVID-19.
Absolutely. Well, we have to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to discuss some of those barriers in regards to people of color and mental health and just seeking out those sources. And we're going to let you talk a little bit more because I want to hear your thoughts on the organization and going out into the community.
Absolutely.
So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will return. But until then, you guys are still listening to The Blackout, where we always shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on Afro Vibes Radio with your girl, Tequila. Hey everybody, you are now tuned back into The Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture, blacked out by the majority on Afro Vibes Radio with your girl, Tequila. We are still in the studio with Miss Kiera Montague, and I'm making sure I say this right, Yared
Yes, thank you.
Salazar.
Thank you, yes.
Yes, because people mess up my name all the time, call me Tequila, so I try my best to make sure I call people by their name.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So before we left off in the first half, we talked about the structure of the organization, some of the resources that you guys provide, and then dealing with mental health, both with counseling and medication. And now we want to go into some of the barriers that a lot of people have to deal with when they're seeking counseling. So first, we'll start off with the Spanish community because that is a large population here in Texas. Tell us about some of their barriers.
Well, first, I wanted to say that coming to this country as an immigrant myself, I can attest on the effects of the culture shock, of the language barriers, the sense of not belonging, not being familiar with the educational system in this country, and what that plays into heightened levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. So I wanted to, because I experienced it myself, again, during my teen years. And some of the barriers that we also see in this population is the immigration status that they may have, may create that fear of reaching out. And sometimes, that keeps them from reaching out to seek this type of services. We still have that taboo, the stigma about mental health, and just also lack of cultural competency at times we've seen, and the lack of healthcare coverage that many of the individuals in this community also experience.
Now, with the Spanish-speaking community, I'm not going to lie, I typically don't see them advocate a lot for mental health. Is it because they aren't being informed about it, or is it just something that's not typically discussed culturally?
I was talking to Kiera earlier this morning about that, and it's getting better, but I think this is something that culturally it's just not very, very common to talk about. So we have this saying in Spanish that la ropa sucia se lava en casa. So, the dirty clothes, it's only to be washed.
I know what that means. What happens in this house
It
stays in this house.
Yes. So we're taught to pretty much, keep it to yourself, and, resiliency, you're strong, you can do it. Always, it's going to go away on its own. So part of it, too, is the lack of knowledge.
Okay.
And not having as much information.
See, when I see the Spanish community, I always look at them, like you said, resilient and strong, because they come here and they don't let anything stop them from getting to where they're going. They'll move into a house together, pay that house off, make sure that family's there. They'll move to another house. They'll start a business, a taco truck, whatever it is. They never complain. They work. And that's why I respect Spanish people so much. So when I hear on the news when Caucasian people make the statements like, oh, they're taking my job or whatever, I'm like, no, they're not taking anything. They're building this from a piece of land that they come together, which I wish in our community we're better at.
I was gonna get that.
You guys are really great at putting your resources together to actually have something to keep and pass down. But I do think that mental health advocacy could probably make an even better difference, because I do have Spanish female friends. They deal with depression, anxiety, and you would never know, but they do.
Yeah.
They have similar family issues, and sometimes we forget we're more alike than we're different.
Amen.
We just are different culturally, but we
Amen.
deal with a lot of the same problems. So what do you feel like in the Black community, some of the barriers that we have as well?
Well, some of the barriers that we see in the Black community with seeking those mental health supports is definitely going to be the generational stigma passed down, right? As people of color and Black men and women, we are seen as resilient, strong. We can get through anything. I mean, look at our history in the United States. We have overcome quite a bit, right? And continue to do so. The other piece is, we don't want the label within the family. We don't want to be deemed crazy. We all have that one family member where it's, oh, stay away from cousin so-and-so. He crazy. He ain't well, So we definitely tend to veer away from getting those help or those supports, even though we could benefit from them, which is so unfortunate. Obviously, the lack of health care is another piece. We either don't have enough health care or we don't have any health care. And also accessibility. If you have a certain type of health insurance, you might be referred to go to some specialist that's several miles away from where you live, and you don't have access to a vehicle. So you would have to take several buses to get where you need to go. So the accessibility of healthcare is not always there either. I'm trying to think, there's so many barriers that we see commonly. But I think that first one, that stigma, that generational stigma that has been passed down about mental health, is that number one barrier we have to overcome. And we only do that through education. We only do that by mitigating that negative talk around mental health to normalize it, as we previously discussed. I think that is very, very important. And knowledge is power. So we definitely have to rely on those supports that are present, as well as do our own self-introspection, look inside, do our own research as individuals, right? So that we can come to an informed decision on our own. And if we can't, then we're going to seek out those supports.
Yeah, and just like the Spanish community, I felt for a long time, the Black community, we kind of prejudged mental health or felt like that was only for a specific community that dealt with that. And now we've come so far that the conversation is open. I really believe social media has been so powerful.
Absolutely.
In really exposing a lot. It could be a blessing and a curse, but I don't think we would have seen half the things that have happened in this world had it not been for social media. Because all media platforms don't necessarily serve us in a positive way. You know, they feed us a lot of negativity.
Absolutely.
And I try with my show to, you know, give those resources. Don't just talk about the problem, is how can we fix it, right?
Exactly.
And so you have an organization that's actively fixing those issues. But if you don't know about it, if you don't know where to look, you don't know really where to begin and start. So for you guys, how are you making it easy for those to actually seek the resources from you and find out how to use them and actually get them?
So the first part is obviously the community outreach, right? We do a lot of that with COVID-19 being what it is. We also make sure that we provide a lot of virtual platforms for them to be able to not only do the intake, but also through service delivery and any other forms of, you know, treatment they would need. We're able to do that virtually, so they don't have to worry about coming in person. What else are we doing, Jared, to make sure we get the services out to folks? Is that pretty much everything that we're doing?
Because you were going into the schools, right? But with schools being shut
Yeah.
down, I'm sure that was a setback.
Absolutely. So the benefit of having the schools is that those who typically would not seek the supports, which is going to be those parents who, you know, they just send their kids to school because they're like, you know, you deal with it at this point, blessings. And then the educators, for them to be able to work with the kiddos and see the barriers and the struggles that the kids are having on the day-to-day, they can then reach out to us at Abundant Life and say, hey, we have this child that we think could benefit from your services. So that's a beautiful, beautiful pipeline and a wonderful partnership and relationship. And it also reduces a little bit of that stress or some of those barriers that a parent might have with actually having to go out and seek the services on their own, because they have an educator at their school who's going to advocate on behalf of the child and then educate the parent on what our services entail and how they can be beneficial to not only the child but also the family.
Now, I also know you said that there's some opportunity for employment with the organization for those that want to help out and join. Can you talk a little bit about that as well and where they can find those resources?
Absolutely. You can go on our website at ALTSTexas.com and apply through there, or you can send an email through outreach at ALTSTexas.com if you are interested in applying. We have roles such as rehab clinician. They provide the skill building to the client and the family. We also have a case manager position, and they coordinate the care for the child and the family and get them access to the resources that are so beneficial and much needed. We have the regional case manager, and they supervise the overall non-clinical work of field staff. We also have a counselor, or LPC or LPHA, which is licensed practitioner of the healing arts position. They are licensed folks who provide therapy and counseling to the individual or family. And have I missed any positions?
That's pretty much all.
Awesome. So right now, those are the positions that we are hiring for. So if anyone out there is interested, please reach out.
Well, amazing. So before you get out of here, again, I want you to make sure you share your link one more time. Before you go, do you have any advice for those family members or those children that know they may be having some type of issues, they don't know how to identify it or what to call it, and are afraid to seek help? What can you tell them or make them feel comfortable enough to come to ALTS?
We're here. We're not here to judge. We are here to provide the support that you need so that you can be self-sufficient. And please give us a call, 832-300-8680.
And Ms. Salazar, how will this organization make a difference in these families' lives?
Well, I really think that for us, we take pride in the staff that we have working with our families, and that rapport that our staff are able to build with the parent and the children. It's so important. It's such an important part of that treatment. And I just think that overall, I wanted to just make reference on the article from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and they make recommendations for kiddos that are now going back to school. And one of the recommendations is that the mental health of students continues to be addressed, because of course we know that the mental health is an strict part of overall health and well-being, and this also includes the opportunity for mental health care for educators, school staff, and parents.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. You're beautiful, you're both intelligent, and I appreciate you informing my audience on so many different things in regards to mental health advocacy and children who deal with those issues as well. So one more time before you get out of here, give us your website and any social media that you may have.
Alrighty, www.altstexas.com is our website, and you can access the links for our social media on there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would love to have you guys back in the future for anything that you have going on to help promote, or just simply come out and volunteer and help. I would love that, because I'm definitely a mental health advocate for sure.
Great.
Awesome.
And I wanted to just end with a quote from Maya Angelou that says, "We're only as blind as we want to be." So hopefully this small segment can make a difference
Oh,
in
it will.
some
Most
of the
definitely.
individuals in the audience. So yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you all for tuning into another episode of The Blackout, where we always shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture, with your girl Tequila on Afro Vibes Radio. Make sure to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Blackout ABR, and to stay up to date on our previous discussions and future events, please visit Afro Vibes Facebook and Instagram at Afro Vibes Radio, Twitter at Afro Vibes Radio with an S, and lastly, listen to us online at www.afrovibesradio.com, or simply download the Afro Vibes Radio app on the Apple or Google Play Store.